We're here with the MMQB's Albert Breer. Albert just got done with the AFC Coaches Breakfast here at the league meeting. Heard a little bit from Sean Payton. He's trying to get things turned around here in Denver. What do you think it's going to take for them to have some success in year one?
Yeah, I really felt like it was incumbent on the Broncos to find a coach who, and this is going to sound bad, but could stand up to Russell Wilson. And I think after what happened last year, it was important whether it was going to be, an ex-player like DeMeco Ryans, a guy with track record at two levels and Jim Harbaugh, or somebody with the skins in the wall that Sean Payton has to come in there and sort of take command. And I think last year, in a lot of ways, Russell got a lot of the things that he wanted for a lot of years in Seattle. He got the staff in the building, the office, the offense, the way he wanted it. And so, part of this is going to be Russell having the humility to look at that and really examine it. But it's also going to be on Sean, to build the right sort of offense for him and get the most out of him. And, I think like this year, it's weird because, last year was so much like, okay, this is going to be Peyton Manning in 2012 in Denver, or this is going to be Tom Brady in Tampa in 2020. When it wasn't, now like it's kind of like rolled back to, okay, do we see signs of the MVP candidate from Seattle from a couple of years ago? And I think it's on Sean Payton now. They're paying them the big bucks to get that out of him. Sean Payton's very, very creative offensively. You don't need me to tell you that. He's made it work for different types of quarterbacks in New Orleans. I mean, going from, Drew Brees to Taysom Hill, like the different things that they were able to do. And, I think that he can make a offense work for any quarterback who's at that level. Is Russell Wilson still at that level? I think he can be there. I think Sean's the right guy to get the most out of him. And I do think again, like a lot of the stuff they were doing in Seattle, the movement stuff, kind of getting him outside the pocket and, threatening with him in the run game. Like, can you incorporate some of that back in? Because my understanding is like a lot of that stuff was stuff he didn't want to do coming out of Seattle. Is he going to be back all in on playing the game that way? Because I think it's a huge part of who he was when he was a Seahawk. And I'd assume that Sean's going to incorporate some of that or try to incorporate some of that stuff back in.
Saw some of that at the end of last year, some flashes there. What do you think about the free agency moves they made to bring in Mike McGlinchey, Ben Powers? Seemed like a concerted effort to get bigger up front for us.
Yeah, there's no question. And I think it's sort of indicative of what Sean always did in New Orleans. Like you always think of the high flying offense, but one of the things that I think was, really clear in Sean's years with the Saints, they invested in the offensive line, not the skill positions. Mm-hmm. And outside of the quarterback, there were a lot of years where there weren't guys making much money at all playing receiver, tight end, and running back. Like they paid Jimmy Graham at the top of the market, traded him a year later. The very end, they paid Mike Thomas and Alvin Kamara. But for the most part, like if you look at his history, it's paying guys like Teron Armstead and Jari Evans and Ben Grubbs. And they had, I would say, a huge investment in the offensive line. And I think that had always been like a bet, like Sean saying implicitly, I can make it work at the skill positions, but we need to invest in the guys up front. So, I think with the trade talk on the receivers with Judy and Sutton, that sort of plays into it too, where, you've invested heavily in the offensive line. And if you need to find resources elsewhere, like I think Sean feels comfortable that he's going to be able to get the most out of whatever skill position players are there, which, I think the Broncos' action and free agency reflects.
Yeah, and just with 5 picks, it's certainly understandable to get some calls on those guys. The last one here for you here, Albert. Last year, Mike Shanahan knocking on the door to the Hall of Fame. Former Broncos head coach, one of the winningest head coaches in NFL history. What do you think about his chances this time around?
I think he should get in. And I think you look at just walk into that ballroom this morning, walk into the ballroom tomorrow, and the impact that he's had and the amount of his people that are around the NFL. Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan, his son, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, and then you look at the amount of people who are running his offense that never worked for him. Like Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland, brought, like the Gary Kubiak offense with him because that was, and that wasn't the one he grew up with, but like, I want to learn how to do that. So he learned it from Gary and he brought it to Cleveland. So, I obviously like the 2 Super Bowl rings are an important piece of Mike Shanahan's resume, but the stuff that he accomplished and the impact that he made on the game and kind of what you see across the NFL right now, I think it's right up there with any of the innovators of the last half century in the NFL. So, I like whether it's this year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, he should and I think will be in.
All right, Albert. Well, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for catching up.
You got it.